Health Secretary Matt Hancock is due to face MPs later, the day after the Prime Minister's former adviser said he should have been fired for lying. Labour's Deputy Leader Angela Rayner, who demanded that Matt Hancock resign in October last year, joins us now. Good morning to you, Angela Rayner. Thank you for joining us this morning. Can we get your initial reaction to what you heard from Dominic Cummings yesterday?
It was devastating what I heard yesterday, and my thoughts are with the loved ones of the thousands of people who Dominic Cummings alleged that died needlessly because of the government's actions and the political decisions that the Prime Minister made. It's incredibly devastating, and we can't delay knowing the lessons that need to be learned and the public inquiry that people deserve now. We need to know that now. We know that people are still at risk. Our border policy is still not fixed. People are still not paid to self-isolate when they need to. And those risks are still live to us. And we need to have confidence that the government are going to act in the interests of the people of this country.
Last year, on October the 6th, on this programme, you were calling for the Health Secretary to resign. But you were overruled by your leader. Let's just remind viewers.
You do think Matt Hancock should resign?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he should hang his head in shame.
So, you'd already called for something that Dominic Cummings now said should have happened. He said he should have been sacked for lying multiple times over the course of the pandemic. Was your leader wrong to overrule you in October last year?
I don't think it was a question of overruling me. It's a question of this government was never going to do the right thing. They haven't resigned. People haven't. And in fact, it's took all this time and for Dominic Cummings to come out to even admit these gross failures. And that's why the public inquiry is of absolute imperative now, because, you know, I'm not interested in persons' individual jobs. I'm interested in protecting the people of this country. As a former care worker, I'm absolutely disgusted that they seeded the virus in our care homes, left people who were vulnerable, who deserve better from the Prime Minister and the Health Secretary, left them vulnerable to needless deaths in care homes because they seeded the virus when they couldn't even see their relatives, and yet they were putting them at harm's way and putting them at risk.
Well,
that's disgusting, and Matt Hancock should answer to that today.
You say you're not interested in individuals. I mean, of course, who is in charge of this crisis is absolutely pertinent, isn't it? I mean, Dominic Cummings suggests the Health Secretary should not have been in charge. You said in October last year he should not have been in charge. Part of the political process is that the opposition applies pressure, has influence, pushes where it needs to. But Sir Keir Starmer seemed to have taken a policy of loyalty to the government, and that wasn't effective.
Well, we were pushing the government, as you say. I was very critical at the time. In fact, I put that allegation direct to the government that I felt they'd seeded the virus in our care homes, and they still haven't fixed things like sick pay now so that people can self-isolate and do the right thing when there is infection around in the community. The government have failed in terms of lockdown. We know that now, especially in September. We know when Keir Starmer was calling on the government to introduce that lockdown, and the scientists were calling for it, and the government failed to do it. So that's why we need the public inquiry immediately, and that's why we need to know that the government have learned the lessons, because otherwise more people will die because of this government's actions.
We heard yesterday perhaps the most stinging criticism of the government has come from government's former chief advisor. In the most blatant and clear way, he laid out a number of reasons why Boris Johnson, in his opinion, wasn't fit for the job, and Matt Hancock had caused so many issues and lied continuously. It's sort of a failure of leadership of the opposition, really, isn't it, when the most stinging criticism has come from a former chief advisor rather than the opposition. And perhaps if our opposition had been stronger, some of these things could have been put right sooner.
Well, like I say, we were pushing very hard, and, you know, the failures, and I'm devastated at what we learnt yesterday. I was concerned about it at the time. I was concerned for my loved ones. I've lost loved ones in this COVID pandemic, as other people have as well. And now what we need to do, and the first job of any Prime Minister, is to keep our citizens safe. They're still not able to do that, and I don't have confidence that they've learnt the lessons. We need that public inquiry, and we need that lessons learned review document published now.
How are you going to, Angela, how are you going to get that inquiry brought forward? Because we know that the government has said it's going to happen, but we know it's not going to happen for a while yet because they're too busy at the moment trying to focus on the pandemic and getting us through it. How are you going to get that inquiry brought forward?
Well, the public have seen laid bare, because of what Dominic Cummings said yesterday, the allegations, the serious allegations about the government's recklessness in how they dealt with this pandemic. Now it's for the public, and I think absolutely right for them, to demand to know, what have you done, what lessons have you learned, and how are you going to protect my loved ones going into the future? And that's what the government is still failing to do, whether that's protecting our borders, whether that's having a plan for our care homes, or whether that's making sure that people can self-isolate, which we know people need to be able to do that now to stop the virus from spreading, especially with the different variants that we know is coming into our country. The government needs to act now to protect people. That's what I'm interested in.
No one's disagreeing with you. You're absolutely right. But I think that the implication of what you're saying is it's going to take the public and the public demanding that this inquiry comes forward to make it come forward, and actually Labour can't make that happen. Are
there any levers you can use? I mean, is there any legal action, parliamentary action? Because simply saying you want it to happen sooner doesn't feel like it's going to happen sooner.
Well, the government have a significant majority in the House of Commons. It's up for Conservative MPs as well to play their part in holding their government to account as well. And that's important. We've called for an inquiry. We've actually pushed many times in Parliament to get the government to do the right thing throughout this pandemic, but we've been voted down in Parliament because they hold a majority. It's now time for them to do the right thing, not pay party politics, but actually do the right thing and reassure the public that the government do have a plan on how to protect their citizens, which is clear yesterday that they had a gross failure to do that.
Can I just ask, on behalf of those people who will say, you can't trust a word Dominic Cummings said, right at the start of the pandemic, he went on he broke lockdown rules by travelling from London to Durham. He decides that testing his eyesight is something you do by putting your family in a car and driving to a tourist location. Why should we take anything that Dominic Cummings says seriously? And why should the Labour Party, who had a go at him about all of those things, now decide that he's the man who's telling the truth?
Well, I don't believe that he should have the final word on this, and that's why I believe the public inquiry and the lessons learned review document should be published now. I don't believe that he's just made up all of these things that he said at the Select Committee yesterday, and I believe the public deserve to know the answers to those questions, and therefore that's why today I'm saying to the government, you need to reassure the public, publish the lessons learned document and start that public inquiry immediately. The families of those that have lost loved ones deserve nothing more than that. We had the highest death toll in Europe. There's a reason for that, and we need to know why.
All right, Angela Rayner, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.